The Emperor's mercy is measured not in grand victories or heroic last stands, but in the simple act of surviving another shift in the depths of humanity's hive cities. For 17 billion souls crushed beneath the weight of existence, the true horror of the 40 honest millennium isn't war, it's peace. I wake to the sound of prayer bells echoing through the ventilation shafts, their bronze voices carried on air thick with incense and industrial smoke. The chronometer beside my sleeping alcove displays the time in red numerals, each digit a reminder that another day of service begins. Around me, in bunks stacked 7 high to the ceiling, my fellow workers stir beneath thin blankets that smell of sweat and fear. The dormitory stretches beyond sight, a cavern of humanity packed so tightly that privacy exists only in the space between one breath and the next. My name is Thaddeus Vaughan, and I am nothing, a designation on a work roster. A serial number tattooed beneath my left shoulder blade. I am one of 17 billion souls crammed into Hive Tertius on the world of Mordigal Prime, and my purpose is simple. I manufacture the bolter shells that keep the Imperium's enemies at bay, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, until my body fails or my faith falters, whichever comes first. The morning prayer begins before my feet touch the cold metal floor. Speakers hidden in the walls crackle to life, broadcasting the voice of Subdeacon Morvis from somewhere high above in the administrative levels. His words wash over us like sacred rain, though I know them by heart after 23 years of service. Blessed are those who toil in darkness, for they bring light to the Emperor's realm. Blessed are those who sacrifice their flesh, for they strengthen his eternal will. Around me, thousands of voices join in unison, the words automatic, born from repetition rather than understanding. I mouth the syllables while my mind focuses on the day ahead. Production quota 77 Alpha requires 3,000 shells completed and blessed by shift's end. Yesterday, we managed 2,847. The difference cost us 3 extra hours of standing prayer and a reduction in our evening ration paste. The water allocation tubes descend from the ceiling with a mechanical wheeze. 2 minutes of tepid recycled water, brown with minerals and chemicals whose names I do not know. I scrub my hands with the provided soap, a grey substance that leaves my skin feeling raw but satisfies the purity requirements. The taste of copper never leaves my mouth. Some say it is from the water. Others whisper it is the taste of fear, permanent and bitter. I dress quickly in the grey coveralls that mark my caste. The fabric is rough against my skin, designed for durability rather than comfort. The Imperial Aquila is embroidered over my heart, its twin heads watching in opposite directions, never blinking, never sleeping. On my collar, the small brass pin that identifies my work detail, level, and clearance rating. Without it, I am not permitted to move beyond the dormitory sections. With it, I am bound to my station as surely as any chain. The breakfast line forms automatically, bodies pressed together in orderly fashion. We learned long ago not to push, not to complain, not to waste time with unnecessary conversation. The food dispensers hum with mechanical efficiency, depositing measured portions of protein paste and vitamin supplements onto our meal trays. The paste is grey and flavourless, but it contains everything necessary to maintain our strength for another day of labour. Flavour is a luxury reserved for those who serve in higher capacities. As I eat, I listen to the morning announcements echoing from speakers placed throughout the mess hall. Today's production goals, updates on planetary defensive status. A reminder that citizens showing signs of mutation should report to the nearest ecclesiarchy station for cleansing. The news from other worlds is always the same, victories against the enemies of mankind. New worlds brought into compliance. The eternal struggle continues, and we are blessed to play our part. But there are other sounds beneath the official words. Whispers passed between workers who dare to speak, rumors of shipping delays that suggest supply lines under attack. Stories of workers from other shifts who simply disappeared, their bunks empty, their names struck from the roster without explanation. These whispers are dangerous, but they persist like weeds growing in the cracks of devotion. The walk to the manufactorum takes 43 minutes through corridors that never see natural light. The walls are lined with devotional scrolls and purity seals, their wax impressions worn smooth by countless hands seeking blessing. Servo skulls drift overhead, their mechanical eyes recording everything, their vox grills occasionally crackling with binary cant as they communicate with the machine spirits that govern our daily routines. I keep my eyes forward, my pace steady, my expression neutral. The other workers move in the same mechanical fashion, a river of grey cloth and bowed heads flowing through arteries of metal and stone. Some are older than me, their backs bent from decades of service, their hands scarred from years of handling blessed ammunition. Others are younger, still carrying traces of hope in their movements, not yet worn smooth by the grinding reality of their existence. All of us share the same destination, the same purpose, the same inevitable end. The manufactorum floor is a cathedral of industry, its ceiling lost in shadows and smoke. Massive conveyor belts snake between workstations, carrying raw materials in one direction and finished products in another. The air thrums with the sound of machinery, a mechanical hymn that never stops, never slows, never allows for silence. Steam hisses from pipes overhead, carrying the blessed oils and sacred unguents that keep the production lines sanctified. My station is number 4779, marked with my designation and blessed with a small shrine to the machine god. The tools are laid out with precise care, each one cleaned and consecrated according to the morning rituals. Shell casings arrive in metal bins, their brass surfaces dull but free of imperfection. Gunpowder, blessed by the tech priests, waits in measured portions. Projectiles, each one inscribed with microscopic prayer scrolls, gleam under the artificial light. The work is methodical, almost meditative in its repetition. Take a casing, inspect for flaws, fill with the precise amount of blessed powder, seat the projectile, crimp the edge with tools that have been used by 1,000 workers before me. Each shell must be perfect, because imperfection in our work means death for the Emperor's servants who depend on our craftsmanship. This knowledge weighs heavy, but it also provides purpose. Every shell I complete might save a loyal guardsman's life, might fell a heretic, might help hold the line against the darkness that presses against our borders. The hours pass without variation. The quota counter above our section ticks upward with each completed shell, but never fast enough to ease the tension that builds throughout the shift. Supervisors walk between the workstations, their red robes marking them as servants of the Mechanicus, their augmetic eyes scanning for inefficiency or imperfection. They rarely speak, but their presence is constant, a reminder that we are watched, measured, evaluated with every movement we make. Halfway through the shift, the daily execution bell tolls 3 times. Somewhere in the hive, 3 citizens have been found wanting. Perhaps they spoke words of doubt. Perhaps their production fell below acceptable levels. Perhaps they simply looked too long at something they should not have seen. The reasons matter less than the outcome. 3 lives ended to maintain the purity and efficiency of our world. 3 examples set for the rest of us to contemplate as we work. I try not to think about the faces behind those tolling bells, but the mind wanders despite our best efforts. Were they workers like me, struggling to meet impossible quotas with failing bodies and tired souls? Were they administrators who made the wrong decision, filed the wrong report, failed to show sufficient enthusiasm for their duties? The uncertainty is perhaps worse than knowing, because it means any of us could be next, for reasons we might never understand. The afternoon brings a new challenge. Word spreads through the factory floor that Imperial Navy representatives will be conducting a quality inspection of our production line. This news transforms the already tense atmosphere into something approaching panic. The supervisors become more aggressive in their oversight, barking corrections and adjustments in binary cant that none of us fully understand but all of us fear. The pace increases, but so does the pressure for perfection. Quality inspections can result in commendations for exceptional work, but they more often result in punishments for failing to meet the exacting standards expected of those who serve the Emperor's war machine. Workers have been taken away during such inspections, never to return. Entire production lines have been shut down, their personnel reassigned to punishment details or worse. The stakes are higher than our usual daily struggle for survival. When the inspection team arrives, the entire floor falls silent, except for the constant hum of machinery. 3 figures in navy blue uniforms move between the workstations, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks that bear the aquila and other symbols of imperial authority. They select shells at random, examining them with instruments I do not recognize, marking their findings on data slates with styluses that gleam like small weapons. At my station, they pause longer than at others. One of the inspectors holds up a shell I completed earlier in the day, turning it in the light, running sensors over its surface. My heart pounds with a rhythm that threatens to shake my hands, but I keep working, focusing on the shell currently in my grasp, trying to appear calm and competent. The inspector makes a notation on his slate, replaces the shell in the completed bin, and moves on without a word. The inspection lasts 2 hours, though it feels like days. When the team finally departs, the silence stretches for long minutes before the normal sounds of production gradually resume. No announcements are made about their findings, no immediate consequences declared. We return to our work with the knowledge that judgment has been passed, but we will not know the verdict until it is delivered in whatever form the authorities deem appropriate. The final hours of the shift are the hardest. Bodies grown tired from hours of repetitive labor begin to make mistakes. Minds dulled by monotony lose focus at crucial moments. The quota counter continues its relentless advance, but our pace slows despite our best efforts. Supervisors become more frequent in their patrols, their mechanical voices offering corrections and warnings with increasing frequency. The pressure builds like steam in the overhead pipes, seeking release that cannot come until the shift bell finally sounds. As the day wears toward its end, I find myself thinking about the world beyond the hive walls. Somewhere above us, beneath a sky I have never seen, the Emperor's armies fight battles whose outcomes determine whether we live or die. Somewhere among the stars, ships carry the products of our labor to distant worlds, where they will serve purposes we can only imagine. Our small contributions become part of something vast and incomprehensible, a war machine spanning the galaxy. But these thoughts are dangerous, and I push them away before they can take root. My world is this station, this shift, this endless cycle of production and rest. To think beyond it is to risk losing focus, making mistakes, drawing unwanted attention. The universe beyond our walls is too large, too complex, too violent for minds like mine to comprehend. Better to concentrate on the work at hand, the simple task that gives meaning to existence. The shift bell finally sounds, its tone cutting through the industrial noise like a sword through flesh. Around me, workers straighten their aching backs, set down their tools, prepare for the long walk back to the dormitories. But the day is not over. Before we can leave, there are prayers to recite, equipment to clean and bless, final inspections to ensure that nothing has been damaged or misplaced during our hours of service. The evening prayer is longer than the morning version, filled with gratitude for another day completed without disaster, requests for strength to face tomorrow's challenges, and acknowledgement of our unworthiness before the Emperor's majesty. The words flow over me like warm water, familiar and comforting, despite their grim implications. We are nothing, the prayers remind us. We exist only to serve, our individual lives matter only as part of the greater whole. After the prayers come the cleansing rituals. We wash our hands and faces with blessed water, scrub away the industrial grime that accumulates during a day of labor, prepare ourselves to enter the sacred spaces where we eat and sleep. The cleansing is both physical and spiritual, a daily renewal of our commitment to purity and service. Some workers linger at the washing stations, savoring these few moments of quiet reflection. Others hurry through the rituals, eager to reach the promise of rest that awaits. The walk back to the dormitories follows the same route as the morning journey, but the corridors feel different in the artificial evening light. Servo skulls are fewer, their watchful presence reduced but never absent. The devotional scrolls seem to absorb the flickering illumination, their sacred words casting shadows that dance and shift with each footstep. The sound of our passage echoes differently, as if the walls themselves are tired after another day of containing our lives. Dinner is a repeat of breakfast, the same grey paste and vitamin supplements dispensed with mechanical precision. But the evening meal carries an additional blessing in the form of water rations that are slightly larger, slightly cleaner. The extra hydration helps wash away the metallic taste that builds throughout the day, though it never completely disappears. Conversation during dinner is slightly more relaxed than at other times, though still conducted in whispers and careful phrases that avoid dangerous topics. Tonight there are rumors of a celebration being planned for those who exceeded their quotas during the quality inspection, extra rations perhaps, or an additional rest period. These rewards are rare but not unknown, small acknowledgements that even the most insignificant servants of the Emperor can achieve moments of distinction. I allow myself a brief hope that my work might be judged worthy, though I know that hope can be as dangerous as doubt if carried too far. After dinner comes the most dangerous part of the day, the brief period before sleep when minds are tired enough to wander into forbidden territory. This is when workers sometimes speak too freely, question too openly, remember too much of what life might have been under different circumstances. The commissariat knows this, and their informants are most active during these evening hours, listening for signs of sedition or weakness that might require correction. I return to my bunk and lie quietly, listening to the sounds of 17 billion people settling into rest. Coughs and whispers echo through the dormitory caverns. Somewhere, a child cries until soothed by voices too tired to offer anything but the hope that tomorrow might be easier. The ventilation systems wheeze and groan, circulating air that tastes of metal and human exhaustion. Sleep comes slowly, interrupted by dreams of endless production lines and shells that never quite meet the required specifications. But sleep does come eventually, carrying with it the mercy of unconsciousness. For a few hours, the weight of existence lifts, the pressure of quotas and inspections fades, the constant awareness of being watched and measured dissolves into blessed darkness. These hours of rest are perhaps the only true freedom we possess, the only time when our minds can drift beyond the boundaries of our designated existence. Morning arrives too soon, announced by the same prayer bells, the same bronze voices carrying the same sacred words. The chronometer displays its red numbers, marking another day in a cycle that will continue until my body fails or my faith falters. Around me, thousands of workers begin the same rituals of waking, washing, eating, preparing for another shift in service to the Emperor's grand design. I am Thaddeus Vaughan, and I am nothing, but in my nothingness I serve a purpose greater than individual existence. Each shell I craft, each prayer I recite, each day I survive, adds one more small thread to the vast tapestry that keeps humanity alive in a universe determined to destroy it. The weight of this responsibility crushes and elevates simultaneously, a burden that gives meaning to meaninglessness. Today's quota will be the same as yesterday's. The quality inspectors may return, or different ones may take their place. The execution bells will toll for citizens whose names I will never know, whose crimes may be as simple as thinking thoughts that should remain unthought. And I will continue working, because work is prayer, and prayer is survival, and survival is the only victory available to those who exist in the spaces between the great battles that define our species' fate. The second day begins like the first, but small differences accumulate like dust in corners no one thinks to clean. The morning water ration is slightly warmer, suggesting maintenance work on the recycling system somewhere in the hive's depths. The protein paste has a different texture, grittier than usual, which might indicate supply chain disruptions or new additives designed to improve our nutritional intake. These minor variations are noteworthy because they represent change in a world designed to eliminate uncertainty through absolute routine. During the walk to the manufactorum, I notice additional servo skulls drifting through the corridors, their mechanical eyes scanning faces with what seems like increased attention. The morning prayers echo with slightly different emphasis, certain phrases repeated more frequently than others. These could be coincidences, random fluctuations in the vast machinery of hive management. Or they could be signs of something larger stirring, changes initiated from levels of authority so far above us that their reasons remain incomprehensible. At my workstation, the blessing rituals feel more urgent today. The tech priest overseeing our section performs additional prayers over the machinery, anointing key components with sacred oils, while chanting in binary cant that carries undertones of concern. The morning quota announcement comes with new addendums about quality requirements, precision tolerances tightened to margins that will be difficult to achieve without slowing our pace. These adjustments suggest that yesterday's inspection results were not entirely favorable. The work begins as always, but the atmosphere is different. Supervisors patrol more frequently, their augmetic eyes lingering longer on each worker's performance. The completed shell counters seem to advance more slowly, though our pace has not decreased. Time itself feels stretched, each hour lasting longer than it should, each completed task requiring more effort than yesterday. The weight of increased scrutiny presses down like a physical force. Midway through the morning shift, an announcement crackles over the Vox speakers. Production line 77 Beta has been selected for additional quality assurance measures. This is our line, our section, our workstations. The news spreads through the workforce like ripples in still water, each person absorbing the implications without visible reaction but feeling the internal shift from routine concern to active fear. Additional quality assurance can mean many things, none of them entirely positive. Within an hour, the additional measures become clear. New supervisors arrive from upper levels, their red robes bearing symbols I do not recognize but which obviously carry significant authority. They establish observation posts at key locations throughout our section, their augmetic eyes recording every movement, every gesture, every deviation from optimal performance. Data slates appear in their mechanical hands, styluses poised to record judgments that will determine our continued usefulness to the Emperor's grand design. The pressure intensifies throughout the day. Every shell must be perfect, every movement efficient, every moment productive. There is no room for the small errors that normally pass unnoticed, no tolerance for the minor variations that are part of human imperfection. We work with the precision of machines while maintaining the prayer-focused mindset expected of faithful servants. The contradiction creates tension that builds in muscles and minds alike. During the midday break, news arrives that sends fresh waves of anxiety through the workforce. 3 workers from the night shift have been selected for transfer to alternative service assignments. Their stations stand empty, their tools redistributed among remaining personnel. No explanation is offered for their removal, but the timing suggests connection to yesterday's inspection results. The message is clear without being stated directly. The afternoon brings fresh challenges as production quotas are adjusted upward to compensate for the reduced workforce. We must maintain the same output with fewer hands, achieve the same quality standards with increased time pressure. The mathematics of this equation are simple but brutal. Someone will fail to meet the requirements. Someone will draw negative attention. Someone will join the ranks of those who disappear without explanation. I focus on my work with desperate intensity, allowing muscle memory to guide my hands while my mind recites every prayer I have ever learned. Each shell becomes a meditation on duty and survival, a small offering to the Emperor who watches over us from his golden throne. The repetitive motions take on ritual significance, each crimped edge a plea for another day of unnoticed service, each completed round a prayer for continued existence. As evening approaches, the quality assessments begin. Supervisors collect samples from each workstation, examining them with instruments that measure tolerances beyond human perception. Their mechanical voices announce findings in binary cant, judgments rendered in mathematical precision that reduces human effort to statistical data, pass or fail, acceptable or deficient, useful or expendable. The categories are absolute, admitting no middle ground. When they reach my station, time seems to slow. The supervisor's augmetic eyes scan my completed work while sensors detect imperfections invisible to natural vision. Data flows across his slate in streams of numbers and symbols that might as well be prophecies of doom. I continue working while he evaluates, trying to project calm competence, while internal voices whisper fears too dangerous to acknowledge consciously. The supervisor makes notes, replaces my samples, moves to the next station without comment. His silence could mean acceptance or damnation, approval or condemnation. In a system where communication flows only downward through hierarchies of authority, the absence of information becomes a form of psychological torture. We are left to interpret silence, to read meaning into mechanical expressions, to find hope or despair in the smallest gestures. The shift ends without ceremony, the daily bell cutting through industrial noise with its promise of temporary rest. But rest feels impossible under the weight of accumulated tension. The additional supervisors remain at their posts, their presence a constant reminder that our performance is being measured against standards we cannot fully comprehend. Tomorrow will bring either vindication or consequences, reward or punishment, continued service or alternative assignments whose nature we dare not contemplate. The evening rituals proceed with unusual solemnity. Prayers are recited with extra fervor, washing ceremonies performed with additional care, meals consumed in silence broken only by the sound of thousands of people trying to find comfort in routine. The familiar patterns provide some relief, but underneath runs a current of anxiety that no amount of devotion can entirely suppress. In the dormitory, conversations are conducted in whispers so soft they barely qualify as communication. Workers share theories and observations, trying to decode the day's events, to understand what might come next. Some speak of friends who disappeared during previous quality assurance periods, their fates unknown but presumably final. Others offer reassurances based on hope rather than evidence, clinging to the possibility that faithful service will be rewarded with continued existence. I lie in my bunk listening to these whispered exchanges, trying to find some pattern that might predict tomorrow's outcome. But the system we serve operates according to logics beyond our understanding, priorities that extend beyond individual lives or even entire worlds. Our significance exists only in aggregate, as part of statistical calculations that balance production output against resource consumption, quality maintenance against expendable personnel. Sleep comes with difficulty, interrupted by dreams of mechanical eyes and measuring instruments, of shells that fail inspection despite perfect craftsmanship, of empty workstations waiting for new occupants. The boundary between conscious fear and unconscious anxiety dissolves, leaving only a persistent awareness that survival depends on factors beyond our control. We exist at the mercy of judgments rendered by minds both human and mechanical, evaluated according to criteria that change without warning or explanation. The third day begins with news that transforms anxiety into something approaching terror. Quality assurance measures are being extended indefinitely. Additional supervisors will remain in place, monitoring performance with continued intensity. Production quotas will be maintained at current levels despite workforce reductions. The message is delivered through official announcements that make these changes sound routine, but everyone understands the implications. We are being tested not just for competence but for endurance, not just for skill but for absolute dedication. Some of us will pass this test and continue serving. Others will be found wanting and removed from the equation. The selection process will be objective, mathematical, final. Personal histories of faithful service provide no protection against current inadequacy. Past achievements cannot compensate for present failures. This knowledge changes the atmosphere in ways both subtle and profound. Workers who previously shared minor shortcuts or offered assistance during difficult procedures now focus exclusively on their own performance. Cooperation continues where required by production processes, but voluntary aid becomes rarer, as everyone recognizes that helping others might draw attention to weaknesses in their own capabilities. Survival becomes an individual rather than collective endeavor. The work itself remains unchanged, but its context is transformed. Each shell crafted under intense scrutiny, each movement recorded for analysis, each breath taken in an atmosphere charged with the possibility of judgment. The quality of our output improves under this pressure, but so does the psychological cost of maintaining such standards. Perfection is achievable only through the sacrifice of everything that makes labor bearable. Lunch breaks become periods of silent evaluation rather than rest. Workers study each other's faces for signs of stress or weakness, looking for clues about who might be selected for removal. The exercise is futile because the selection criteria remain hidden, but humans cannot resist the urge to predict their own fate by analyzing external signs. Fear creates its own forms of divination, rituals of observation that provide the illusion of understanding without actual insight. The afternoon shift brings an unexpected development. A new worker arrives to fill one of the empty stations, a woman whose age and experience suggest transfer from another section rather than fresh assignment. Her presence raises questions that cannot be asked directly. Why was she moved here during a period of quality assurance? What happened in her previous assignment? Is her arrival a sign of confidence in our section's performance or preparation for further workforce adjustments? She works with the focused intensity of someone aware that first impressions carry permanent consequences. Her technique is flawless, her pace consistent, her attitude appropriately reverent. But there is something in her eyes that suggests familiarity with fear, knowledge gained through experiences similar to our current situation. She has survived previous quality assessments, which makes her either exceptionally competent or extraordinarily fortunate. As the day progresses, patterns emerge in the supervisor's attention. Certain workstations receive more scrutiny than others. Certain workers face more frequent interruptions for measurement and evaluation. These differences could be random, but they feel systematic, as if decisions are being made through processes invisible to us. The mathematics of judgment proceed according to algorithms we cannot perceive, but whose results will determine our continued existence. Evening brings the day's first clear consequence. During the shift-end announcements, 3 worker designations are called for immediate reporting to administrative offices. The named individuals set down their tools, clean their stations with unusual care, and walk away from their workbenches with the steady pace of people who understand that their service in this capacity has ended. Whether they will be reassigned, retrained, or processed for alternative forms of contribution remains unspecified. Their departure leaves gaps in the production line that will need to be filled, quotas that must be met with further reduced personnel. The mathematics become increasingly difficult as the available workforce shrinks while expectations remain constant. Someone will need to work faster, more efficiently, with even greater precision. The survivors will carry additional burden as the price of continued survival. The evening rituals proceed with mechanical precision, but underneath the familiar patterns runs a current of desperate gratitude among those still present to perform them. Each prayer recited represents another day of useful service, each washing ceremony a renewal of commitment to purity and efficiency. The routine activities take on heightened significance as expressions of continued worthiness, rather than mere obligations. In the dormitories, the empty bunks serve as silent reminders of the selection process at work around us. Personal belongings have been removed, sleeping spaces reallocated, any evidence of individual existence carefully erased. The efficiency of this erasure suggests long practice, systematic procedures for managing the transition from useful service to alternative contribution. The system operates with the smooth precision of a machine designed for exactly these purposes. Sleep remains elusive, interrupted by the awareness that tomorrow will bring fresh evaluations, new opportunities for failure, additional chances to be found wanting. The quality assurance period continues without specified end date, a perpetual examination that could conclude at any moment with judgments both positive and negative. We exist in a state of suspended resolution, useful servants whose usefulness is under constant review. Dreams blend with waking thoughts, creating a continuous stream of anxiety punctuated by brief moments of unconsciousness. The boundaries between rest and work, sleep and vigilance, safety and danger become increasingly unclear. Everything becomes part of the evaluation process, every moment a test of worthiness for continued service. The totality of existence narrows to the single question of whether tomorrow will bring another opportunity to demonstrate usefulness to the Emperor's grand design. Morning arrives with familiar bells and unfamiliar announcements. The quality assurance period has produced preliminary results, though these will not be shared with the workforce until final evaluations are complete. This news provides no comfort, only confirmation that judgments are being made through processes beyond our influence or understanding. We continue working while decisions about our fate proceed according to criteria that remain opaque to those most affected by their outcomes. The 4th day brings subtle changes that accumulate into significant shifts in our daily reality. The morning prayer includes additional verses about acceptance of divine will, suggesting that major announcements may be forthcoming. Water rations are adjusted slightly upward, which could indicate either reward for improved performance or preparation for workforce changes that will affect consumption calculations. The protein paste includes new additives whose purpose remains unclear, but whose presence marks another small deviation from established routine. At the workstations, the intensity of supervision reaches new levels. Mechanical eyes record every gesture, every pause, every deviation from optimal efficiency. Data streams flow constantly to analysis centers where human and machine intelligence collaborate to reduce our performance to mathematical certainties. The weight of this attention creates its own form of pressure, transforming simple tasks into acts of desperate precision. New tools appear at selected workstations, precision instruments that enable more accurate manufacturing while requiring higher levels of skill to operate effectively. These could be rewards for superior performance or challenges designed to identify those incapable of adapting to increased demands. The ambiguity is intentional, forcing us to treat every change as both opportunity and threat, every improvement as potential trap. During the midday break, word spreads about developments in other sections of the manufactorum. Production line 77 Alpha has completed their quality assurance period with positive results, earning commendations and minor increases in rations. Line 77 Gamma has been restructured entirely, their workforce reassigned to alternative duties, while new personnel undergo training for replacement positions. These examples provide models for what might await us, though neither outcome can be predicted or influenced through any action available to us. The afternoon shift introduces a new element of uncertainty. Representatives from the Departamento Munitorum arrive to conduct their own evaluation of our output, examining shells not just for technical quality, but for adherence to specifications that encompass everything from weight distribution to prayer scroll placement. Their standards operate independently of the tech priest requirements, creating overlapping but potentially contradictory criteria for acceptable performance. This development transforms an already complex situation into something approaching impossible. We must satisfy multiple evaluation systems simultaneously, each with its own priorities and tolerances, each capable of rendering judgment that supersedes favorable results from other assessments. The mathematical precision required becomes superhuman, demanding perfection across multiple dimensions of performance, while maintaining the spiritual dedication expected of faithful servants. As evening approaches, the first clear indication of our fate begins to emerge. Supervisors conduct final measurements with equipment more sophisticated than anything previously deployed, instruments that detect molecular-level variations in our craftsmanship. These readings are transmitted directly to data analysis centers, where final calculations proceed according to algorithms that weigh technical competence against resource efficiency, individual performance against collective output. The shift ends without announcement of results, but the silence itself carries meaning. Decisions have been made, judgments rendered, fates determined. Tomorrow will bring either vindication or consequence, reward or punishment, continued service or alternative contribution. The night passes slowly for those aware that it might be their last in current circumstances, the final hours of existence as designated servants in this particular capacity. Dreams and waking thoughts blend into continuous streams of anticipation and dread. Some workers pray with increased fervor, seeking divine intervention in processes already concluded. Others focus on practical preparations, organizing personal belongings that might need to be transferred quickly, memorizing prayers that could provide comfort during transitions to unknown circumstances. The dormitory fills with the sounds of people preparing for changes they cannot predict or control. Sleep comes in fragments between moments of acute awareness that judgment is imminent. The familiar sounds of 17 billion people settling into rest become a symphony of shared anxiety, millions of individual fears combining into collective acknowledgement that survival depends on forces beyond human influence. We exist at the mercy of systems designed to optimize efficiency through precise calculation of human worth measured against available alternatives. Dawn brings the announcement we have anticipated with equal measures of hope and terror. The quality assurance period has concluded. Results will be announced following morning prayers and breakfast distribution. Personnel affected by workforce adjustments should prepare for immediate implementation of new assignments. The language is bureaucratic, sanitized, designed to present radical changes as routine administrative procedures. The morning rituals proceed with unusual solemnity as everyone recognizes their potential finality in current form. Prayers are recited with desperate intensity, washing ceremonies performed with extra care, meals consumed with the awareness that they might be the last shared in present company. The familiar patterns take on heightened significance as expressions of gratitude for opportunities that may not be renewed. After breakfast, we assemble in the main factory floor for announcements that will restructure our existence according to mathematical principles beyond our comprehension. Supervisors arrange themselves at elevated positions while administrative personnel prepare data slates containing judgments rendered through processes that reduced our lives to statistical calculations. The moment of resolution approaches with the inevitability of mechanical precision. The announcements begin with commendations for those whose performance exceeded all requirements. Names are called, worker designations announced, minor rewards distributed to acknowledge superior contribution to the Emperor's grand design. These individuals will continue in current assignments with enhanced status and slightly improved conditions. Their success provides evidence that excellence is possible, achievable through absolute dedication to prescribed duties. Next come the neutral assessments, the majority verdict for those whose performance met requirements without distinction. These workers will continue current assignments without change, their service deemed adequate for continuation under existing parameters. The news brings relief rather than celebration, survival rather than triumph. Continued existence represents victory in a system designed to eliminate redundancy through continuous evaluation. Finally, the redistributions are announced. Worker designations called for alternative service assignments, their skills deemed better suited for different contributions to imperial efficiency. The language remains neutral, administrative, carefully designed to present termination as opportunity for enhanced service in capacities better matched to individual capabilities. Those selected respond with the disciplined acceptance expected of faithful servants, gathering their belongings while maintaining appropriate gratitude for continued usefulness to the Emperor's will. I listen to these announcements with the focused attention of someone whose fate hangs in balance between categories, whose boundaries remain unclear until the moment of proclamation. My worker designation approaches alphabetically, the inevitable resolution drawing closer with each name announced. The mathematics of judgment proceed according to criteria I cannot influence, but whose results will determine whether tomorrow brings familiar routine or unknown alternative. When my designation is finally called, it comes in the second category: adequate performance, continued assignment, survival without distinction. The relief is overwhelming, a flood of gratitude for the opportunity to continue serving in familiar capacity. Another day, another shift, another chance to contribute to the vast machinery that keeps humanity alive in a universe determined to destroy it. But the relief is tempered by awareness of those selected for redistribution, workers whose service in this capacity has ended despite years of faithful dedication. Their departure leaves spaces that will be filled by new personnel, the cycle of evaluation and replacement continuing with mechanical precision. The system operates according to principles that optimize collective efficiency through calculated sacrifice of individual continuity. The day concludes with modified routines adjusted for reduced personnel and redistributed responsibilities. Those remaining must absorb additional duties while maintaining the same quality standards that prompted the recent evaluation period. The mathematics become more challenging, but the consequences of failure remain absolute. Excellence is not optional when survival depends on continued usefulness to purposes greater than individual existence. Evening brings the first glimpse of our new reality. Empty workstations are cleaned and prepared for incoming personnel whose training will proceed according to lessons learned through recent quality assurance procedures. The efficiency of this transition demonstrates the system's capacity for continuous optimization, its ability to process human resources with the same mechanical precision applied to raw materials and finished products. The new workers arrive within hours of the announcements, their grey coveralls fresh from supply distribution, their faces carrying expressions familiar from memories of my own first day 23 years ago. They move with the careful attention of people aware that initial impressions will influence all subsequent evaluations, their gestures measured and appropriate, their silence broken only by whispered prayers for guidance and acceptance. I watch them take positions at stations recently vacated by workers whose names are already being erased from rosters and records. The continuity of production supersedes individual identity, the flow of shells maintaining its rhythm despite the human changes that punctuate but never interrupt the greater process. New hands learn the same motions, new minds absorb the same prayers, new bodies adapt to the same demands that have shaped countless servants before them. Training proceeds with accelerated intensity, the compressed instruction period forcing rapid adaptation to procedures that took me months to master. The new workers struggle with techniques that have become automatic through repetition, their movements awkward and uncertain where mine flow with practiced efficiency. But they learn quickly, driven by awareness that competence must be demonstrated before evaluation periods conclude with permanent judgments. During the midday break, I find myself assigned as mentor to one of the new arrivals, a young woman whose worker designation marks her as fresh from the education sectors, where citizens receive basic training before assignment to productive duties. Her questions reveal gaps in understanding that I remember from my own early service, uncertainties about procedures and expectations that experience gradually resolves through accumulated observation and instruction. She asks about the workers who previously occupied these stations, what happened to them, whether their reassignment represents advancement or punishment. I provide answers that acknowledge the transitions without speculating about their nature, explanations that satisfy curiosity while avoiding dangerous territory. The fate of redistributed personnel is not discussed in detail, their alternative service assignments described only in terms that emphasize continued contribution to imperial purposes. But her questions awaken thoughts I have learned to suppress, memories of other workers who disappeared during previous evaluation periods, faces that became absent without explanation or acknowledgement. The young woman's concern about her predecessors mirrors worries I once harbored, fears that experience has taught me to contain rather than resolve. Some knowledge is too dangerous to pursue, some understanding too costly to achieve. The afternoon shift proceeds with the awkward rhythm of mixed experience levels, seasoned workers adjusting their pace to accommodate newcomers while maintaining production quotas that admit no reduction for training periods. The efficiency calculations remain constant despite personnel changes, demanding that collective output continue at established levels regardless of individual capability variations. The mathematics of this requirement force additional effort from those capable of superior performance. As evening approaches, the new workers display signs of exhaustion that I remember from my own early days. The physical demands of continuous precision work, combined with psychological pressure of constant evaluation, create fatigue that goes beyond mere tiredness. Their movements slow despite conscious efforts to maintain pace, their attention wavers despite awareness that concentration is essential for survival in current assignments. During the shift-end prayers, their voices join the collective recitation with enthusiasm born from genuine gratitude for opportunities to serve. The words carry different meaning for those who have not yet learned to recite them automatically, whose faith remains conscious rather than habitual. Their devotion reminds me of emotions I once felt, but have learned to moderate through years of accumulated experience with the reality behind the sacred language. The evening meal provides opportunity for informal instruction in survival techniques that are never officially discussed, but are essential for long-term continuation in current assignments. I share knowledge about pacing work to avoid premature exhaustion, about maintaining attention without appearing overly focused, about projecting appropriate levels of competence without drawing excessive scrutiny. These lessons constitute unauthorized education, but they serve purposes that benefit overall productivity. In the dormitories, the new workers ask questions about life beyond the immediate demands of daily service, about advancement opportunities and retirement provisions, about families and connections that might exist outside the hive structure. Their inquiries reveal assumptions about existence that I once shared, but have learned to abandon through gradual recognition of actual rather than theoretical realities. The answers I provide are gentle but accurate, truth delivered in doses that can be absorbed without causing despair. Sleep comes more easily tonight, the successful completion of another evaluation period providing temporary relief from the constant anxiety that accompanies uncertain status. But the relief is limited by knowledge that assessment never truly ends, that performance monitoring continues during every moment of service, that future evaluations will arrive with the same mathematical precision that characterized recent proceedings. Survival represents only temporary victory in a system designed for continuous optimization through calculated replacement. Dreams carry fragments of conversations with redistributed workers, memories of colleagues whose service concluded during previous quality assurance periods, faces that become increasingly difficult to recall as time passes and new personnel fill spaces they once occupied. The human cost of efficiency improvements remains visible only in these unconscious moments when rational suppression of dangerous thoughts relaxes its protective control. Morning brings news that transforms recent victories into renewed uncertainties. The manufactorum has been selected for inclusion in a system-wide efficiency enhancement program, a comprehensive review of operations that will examine every aspect of production from raw material acquisition through finished product distribution. The announcement presents this development as recognition of our excellence, reward for the superior performance demonstrated during recent evaluations. But experience suggests alternative interpretations. System-wide reviews often precede major restructuring, wholesale changes that optimize performance through methods more radical than personnel redistribution. Entire facilities can be relocated, production lines completely redesigned, workforce requirements altered according to calculations that encompass factors beyond local efficiency measurements. The scope of potential change expands beyond individual survival to encompass the continuation of familiar existence itself. The new workers receive this announcement with confusion, lacking sufficient experience to interpret its implications. They focus on the positive language, the references to recognition and excellence, the suggestions of advancement and improvement. Their optimism highlights the distance between official presentations and operational realities, the gap between authorized interpretation and accumulated understanding of actual patterns. Preparation for the system-wide review begins immediately, supervisors implementing new monitoring procedures, while administrative personnel compile comprehensive records of recent performance data. The intensity of documentation exceeds anything experienced during local evaluations, suggesting review criteria that encompass dimensions of assessment previously unconsidered. Every aspect of our operation will be measured against standards whose nature and origin remain unspecified. Work continues under this enhanced scrutiny, but the atmosphere shifts in ways both subtle and profound. Conversations become more guarded, movements more calculated, expressions more carefully controlled. The awareness of comprehensive evaluation creates behavioral modifications that ripple through every interaction, every gesture, every moment of existence within the monitoring environment. We become conscious performers in a production whose script remains unknown to the actors. The days blur together under constant observation, each shift blending into the next through shared awareness that judgment proceeds according to criteria beyond our comprehension. The new workers adapt quickly to this atmosphere, their initial enthusiasm replaced by the focused intensity required for survival under conditions of perpetual assessment. They learn the unspoken rules through observation and instruction, absorbing survival techniques that are essential but never officially acknowledged. Food rations are adjusted according to calculations that factor the review period's enhanced demands, portions increased slightly to maintain productivity under stress conditions that exceed normal operational parameters. The improvement is minor but noticeable, a small acknowledgement that extraordinary circumstances require modifications to standard resource allocation. The gesture provides limited comfort, while confirming that current conditions are indeed extraordinary. Sleep becomes increasingly fragmented as anxiety accumulates through days of intensified monitoring. Dreams blend with waking thoughts, creating continuous streams of consciousness that incorporate elements of work procedures, evaluation criteria, and unconscious fears about outcomes beyond individual control. The boundary between rest and vigilance dissolves under pressure that transforms even private moments into components of the assessment process. Weeks pass without conclusion to the review period, the extended evaluation creating its own form of psychological pressure that differs from but equals the intensity of abbreviated assessments. The prolonged uncertainty wears away mental reserves that are essential for maintaining the focus required for acceptable performance. Some workers begin showing signs of strain that could themselves become factors in final judgments about continued usefulness. Then, without warning or preparation, the review concludes. Announcement comes during a routine shift change, delivered through the same Vox speakers that carry daily prayers and production updates. The comprehensive evaluation has been completed, results compiled, recommendations submitted to appropriate authorities for implementation. Personnel affected by forthcoming changes will receive notification according to established procedures. The language provides no indication of outcomes, no preview of consequences, no preparation for results that could range from commendation to complete restructuring. We continue working while waiting for judgments that will determine whether tomorrow brings familiar routine or fundamental alteration of existence as we have known it. The mathematics of optimization proceed according to algorithms whose logic remains opaque to those most affected by their conclusions. Evening brings the first concrete indication of our fate. Supervisors begin removing equipment from selected workstations, dismantling tools and redistributing components according to authorization codes that suggest major operational changes. The activity proceeds with mechanical efficiency, but its pattern reveals no clear logic that might predict which positions will be eliminated, which retained, which modified according to new requirements. I watch this process while maintaining focus on current duties, trying to interpret signs that might indicate my own status within whatever restructuring is being implemented. But the criteria remain invisible, the selection process proceeding according to calculations that weigh factors beyond individual performance. The comprehensive nature of the review suggests changes that encompass considerations extending far beyond local efficiency measurements. The shift ends without announcements, but the evening prayers include new verses about accepting divine will and finding purpose in changed circumstances. The additions suggest that major transitions are imminent, alterations that will require spiritual as well as practical adaptation. We recite these new words while contemplating possibilities that range from minor adjustments to complete transformation of our existence within the imperial structure. Night brings restless sleep interrupted by sounds of continued activity in areas normally quiet during rest periods. Mechanical voices echo through ventilation systems, speaking in binary cant that carries undertones of urgency and purpose. The nocturnal operations suggest preparations for changes too extensive to complete during normal shift hours, modifications that require time and resources beyond standard maintenance procedures. Dawn arrives with news that confirms our fears while providing no clarity about their resolution. The manufactorum will undergo complete operational restructuring according to new efficiency specifications developed through the recent comprehensive review. Current personnel will be evaluated for compatibility with modified procedures, those deemed suitable receiving additional training while others are processed for alternative service assignments more appropriate to their capabilities. The announcement presents these changes as opportunities for advancement and improved service to the Emperor's grand design, but the language cannot disguise the fundamental nature of what approaches. The dissolution of familiar patterns and their replacement with systems optimized according to criteria that may bear little resemblance to current operations. Our existence as we have known it approaches its end, though what will replace it remains unspecified. Preparation for restructuring begins immediately, current procedures continuing while new equipment arrives and training materials are distributed to personnel selected for retention under modified operational parameters. The selection criteria remain unstated, but patterns emerge suggesting preferences for specific combinations of technical competence, physical endurance, and psychological adaptability that may not correspond to current performance rankings. I find myself included among those selected for additional training, though the reasons for this choice remain unclear. The new procedures bear little resemblance to current practices, requiring different skills and different approaches to tasks that share only superficial similarity with familiar duties. The learning curve is steep, demanding rapid adaptation to concepts and techniques that challenge accumulated experience and established habits. The training period proceeds with compressed intensity, knowledge transfer accelerated to meet implementation schedules that admit no delay for gradual adjustment. Those who adapt quickly demonstrate continued utility, while others struggle with requirements that exceed their capacity for rapid change. The process serves dual functions as education and final evaluation, teaching new skills while identifying those incapable of transition to modified operational parameters. As restructuring proceeds, the physical environment undergoes transformation that mirrors personnel changes. Familiar equipment disappears, replaced by machinery that operates according to different principles while serving similar ultimate purposes. The layout of workstations changes, the flow of materials is redirected, the rhythm of production shifts to accommodate new procedures that optimize efficiency through methods previously unconsidered. The new workers who arrived during the recent evaluation period adapt more easily to these changes, their brief experience with current procedures providing less resistance to modification than my decades of accumulated habit. They embrace new training with enthusiasm that I struggle to match, their flexibility highlighting the psychological costs of extended service under previous operational parameters. Change becomes more difficult as familiarity deepens, adaptation requiring greater effort when established patterns must be abandoned. But adaptation proceeds despite psychological resistance, survival demanding acceptance of whatever modifications serve the greater efficiency of imperial production. I learn new techniques while maintaining awareness that further changes may follow, that optimization is an ongoing process rather than a destination to be reached and maintained. The system evolves continuously, human components expected to evolve accordingly, or face replacement by alternatives better suited to emerging requirements. Weeks pass as restructuring nears completion, the new operational parameters taking shape through accumulated modifications and adjustments. The final configuration bears little resemblance to previous arrangements, efficiency improvements achieved through methods that required comprehensive reimagining of fundamental procedures. Production capacity increases while resource requirements decrease, mathematical optimization realized through human adaptation to machine logic. On the day restructuring is declared complete, we assemble for ceremonies marking the transition from old procedures to new operational parameters. Prayers are offered for successful adaptation and continued service under modified conditions. Supervisors deliver addresses acknowledging our flexibility and dedication during the transition period. The language emphasizes continuity rather than change, presenting radical transformation as natural evolution of existing commitment to imperial service. But beneath the ceremonial recognition lies awareness of what has been lost through optimization. Familiar routines that provided psychological comfort, personal relationships that developed through shared experience, individual identities that found expression within previous operational constraints. The human costs of efficiency remain unacknowledged in official assessments. Mathematical calculations that weigh productivity gains against resource expenditures without accounting for intangible losses that resist quantification. As night falls on our first day under new operational parameters, I lie in my bunk contemplating changes that have altered not just procedures, but the fundamental nature of existence within this facility. The sounds are different, the rhythms changed, the atmosphere transformed through modifications that extend beyond mere technical adjustments. We continue serving the same ultimate purposes, but we serve them as different people in a different world. Our identities reshaped through adaptive requirements that optimize human resources according to mechanical principles. The prayer bells still toll at appointed hours, their bronze voices carrying the same sacred words through air that tastes subtly different, processed by ventilation systems modified to accommodate new operational requirements. The chronometer displays time in the same red numerals, but the hours feel altered in ways that resist precise description. We measure the same duration through different experiences, time itself seemingly transformed by the context in which it passes. Sleep comes with difficulty, consciousness reluctant to surrender awareness of changes that continue processing through unconscious adaptation periods. Dreams incorporate elements of both old and new procedures, memories blending with recent training to create mental landscapes that reflect transition periods when familiar certainties dissolve without clear replacement. The mind struggles to integrate experiences that challenge established patterns of understanding and expectation. Morning brings the first full operational day under new parameters, reality testing theoretical training through practical application. The procedures feel foreign despite weeks of preparation, muscle memory conflicting with conscious instruction, established habits requiring continuous correction. But adaptation proceeds through repetition and necessity, competence emerging gradually as theory transforms into practiced routine. The other workers display similar adjustment challenges, their movements uncertain and deliberate where previous operations flowed with automatic precision. But we adapt together, shared uncertainty creating bonds that replace relationships lost through restructuring. New forms of cooperation emerge as we navigate unfamiliar procedures while maintaining production standards that admit no reduction for transition difficulties. Days accumulate into weeks as new operational parameters become increasingly familiar, though never entirely comfortable. The modified procedures prove effective in achieving their designed objectives, production efficiency improving while resource consumption decreases according to optimization calculations. Our adaptation serves the greater purpose while transforming us into different versions of ourselves, identities reshaped through service to requirements that supersede individual preferences. But questions remain unresolved beneath the surface of successful adaptation. What happened to workers deemed unsuitable for retention under new parameters? Where were they reassigned, and do their alternative service assignments provide continuation of meaningful existence? The answers to these questions are not provided through official channels, leaving space for speculation that ranges from optimistic to terrifying, depending on individual psychological tendencies and accumulated experience with imperial administrative procedures. The young woman I mentored during the previous transition approaches me during a rest period, her questions now focusing on long-term prospects rather than immediate survival. She asks about advancement opportunities, about retirement provisions, about the possibility of family connections that might exist outside the hive structure. Her inquiries reveal assumptions about existence that I recognize from my own early service, hopes that experience will gradually modify through accumulated understanding of actual rather than theoretical realities. I provide answers that acknowledge possibilities while tempering expectations with practical awareness of system limitations. Advancement exists but follows criteria that may not correspond to individual aspirations. Retirement provisions are available, but may take forms different from anticipated outcomes. Family connections remain possible, but must be balanced against service obligations that take precedence over personal relationships. These conversations carry undertones of responsibility that extend beyond mere information transfer. The guidance I provide influences expectations and decisions that will shape another person's adaptation to imperial service requirements. The weight of this influence creates awareness of my own transformation from someone who received such guidance to someone who provides it, the cycle of experience continuing through generational transfer of accumulated knowledge. As months pass under new operational parameters, the modified procedures become sufficiently familiar to allow consciousness to drift during routine operations. The mind, no longer entirely occupied with technical requirements, begins processing broader implications of our situation. We exist within systems designed for optimization through continuous modification, human resources adjusted according to changing requirements that serve purposes extending beyond individual understanding. The prayer bells continue tolling at appointed hours, their bronze voices carrying words that provide continuity despite operational changes. But the prayers themselves seem different when recited under new circumstances, familiar syllables carrying altered meaning through contexts that have shifted in fundamental ways. The sacred language adapts to changed reality while maintaining surface consistency that masks deeper transformation. Production quotas are met with increasing regularity as adaptation reaches completion, efficiency targets achieved through human flexibility that accommodates machine requirements. Our success demonstrates the system's capacity for optimization through calculated modification of operational parameters. But success comes with awareness that further changes may follow, that optimization is an ongoing process rather than a destination to be reached and maintained indefinitely. In quiet moments between shifts, when consciousness is free to contemplate existence beyond immediate technical requirements, I find myself wondering about the larger purposes served by our continuous adaptation. The shells we manufacture contribute to conflicts whose nature and location remain unknown to us. The efficiency improvements we achieve through modified procedures serve strategic objectives that extend beyond planetary boundaries to encompass star systems and sectors whose names we will never learn. Our significance exists only in aggregate, individual contributions meaningful only as components of collective output that serves the Emperor's grand design. This knowledge provides purpose while emphasizing our fundamental insignificance, the contradiction that defines existence for countless billions who serve functions they cannot fully comprehend. We are essential and expendable simultaneously, valuable and replaceable according to calculations that weigh current utility against future requirements. The new workers continue asking questions about prospects and possibilities, their optimism gradually modified by accumulated experience, but never entirely eliminated. Hope persists despite evidence that individual aspirations must be subordinated to collective needs, that personal advancement serves system requirements rather than individual fulfillment. The cycle continues as fresh personnel arrive to replace those processed for alternative service assignments, each generation learning the same lessons through direct experience rather than instruction. Tonight, as I lie in my bunk, listening to the sounds of 17 billion people settling into rest, I contemplate the vast machinery of existence that encompasses our lives while extending far beyond our understanding. Somewhere above the hive's highest levels, beneath stars I have never seen, the Emperor's servants make decisions that will determine whether tomorrow brings familiar routine or further adaptation requirements. Our fate depends on judgments rendered according to criteria we cannot influence or comprehend. Mathematics that reduce human existence to statistical variables in equations whose solutions serve purposes greater than individual survival. The prayer bells toll the hour with their ancient rhythm, bronze voices carrying sacred words through air that tastes of metal and human effort. Around me, thousands of workers dream of shells and quotas and evaluation periods, their unconscious minds processing daily experiences through patterns established by decades of service to purposes larger than themselves. We exist in the spaces between great battles, our significance measured not by individual achievement, but by collective contribution to the war machine that keeps humanity alive in a universe determined to destroy it. I am Thaddeus Vaughan, and I am nothing, but my nothingness serves something greater than individual existence, each shell I craft adding one more thread to the vast tapestry that holds the line against darkness. Tomorrow will bring another shift, another quota, another day of service under parameters that may change without warning or explanation. And I will continue working because work is prayer, and prayer is survival, and survival is the only victory available to those who exist between the battles that define our species' fate. The chronometer displays its red numerals, marking time that flows according to rhythms established by authorities whose names I will never know, whose faces I will never see, whose decisions will determine whether I wake tomorrow to familiar routine or to changes that will reshape existence in ways I cannot predict or prepare for. The uncertainty is absolute, but so is the certainty that service continues regardless of individual preference or understanding. In the darkness between one breath and the next, between consciousness and dreams, between this moment and whatever comes after, I exist as part of something too vast to comprehend, but too essential to abandon. The machinery of the Imperium turns with grinding inevitability, consuming human resources according to calculations that optimize survival through sacrifice, efficiency through adaptation, continuity through constant change. The prayer bells fade into silence, their message delivered and received by millions who will carry its meaning into sleep and dreams, and whatever morning brings. The Emperor watches from his golden throne, his divine will expressed through systems that operate with mechanical precision, while demanding human flexibility that adapts to requirements beyond individual comprehension. And in the quiet spaces between prayers and quotas, between shifts and evaluations, between existence and whatever lies beyond it, the truth remains unspoken but universally understood by those who serve in the darkness between battles. We are the cost of survival, the price of continuity, the human currency spent to purchase another day of existence for a species balanced on the edge of extinction. The ventilation systems wheeze their eternal rhythm, circulating air that carries the mingled sense of 17 billion lives measured in shifts survived, quotas met, prayers recited with desperate faith in purposes larger than understanding. Somewhere in the darkness, new workers prepare for their first shift while others complete their last, the cycle continuing with mechanical precision that transforms individual tragedy into collective necessity. Tomorrow the bells will ring again, and we will rise to serve another day in whatever capacity our usefulness demands. The shells will be crafted, the prayers will be recited, the quotas will be pursued with desperate intensity, born from knowledge that failure means more than personal consequence. We will continue existing in the spaces between great events, our significance measured in aggregate rather than individual terms, our survival dependent on adaptation to requirements that change according to mathematical principles beyond human influence. The Emperor's mercy is measured in shifts survived, and tonight we have survived another one.